Sometimes the most unexpected doors open when you're running out of options. Sometimes the person who seems the most untouchable turns out to be the most broken inside. And sometimes, taking care of someone else's child teaches you more about love than you ever thought possible. This is the story of Emma Walsh, a 26-year-old woman who answered a job advertisement that would change her life forever. She thought she was just becoming a nanny to a wealthy man's daughter. She had no idea she was about to step into a world where million-dollar deals happen over breakfast, where loneliness lives in mansions, and where a little girl's laughter could crack open the most guarded heart. What happens when someone who has everything meets someone who has nothing left to lose? What happens when the walls built to keep the world out start crumbling from the inside? This is that story. This is about how Emma Walsh became the woman who did the impossible. She made Alexander Blackwell remember what it felt like to be human again. Emma Walsh stared at her laptop screen, the cursor blinking mockingly in the empty search bar. 3 months. That's how long she'd been looking for a job, and her savings account was screaming louder than her empty stomach. The small apartment she shared with her best friend Maya felt more cramped each day, especially when she could see the worry lines deepening around Maya's eyes every time the rent came up in conversation. She scrolled through the same job websites she'd checked 100 times before, hoping something new had appeared overnight. Teaching positions were scarce, and the few that existed wanted someone with more experience than her newly minted education degree could provide. The retail jobs barely paid enough to cover transportation costs, and the office positions all seemed to want 5 years of experience for entry-level work. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother asking how the job hunt was going. Emma set the phone face down on her desk without responding. How could she explain that she felt like a complete failure at 26? That the confident woman who had graduated summa cum laude just 6 months ago now questioned every decision she'd ever made? The apartment door slammed shut, making Emma jump. Maya appeared in the doorway of their shared living room. Her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a double shift at the hospital. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of too many hours and not enough sleep. "Any luck today?" Maya asked, dropping her bag by the door with a heavy thud. Emma shook her head, not trusting her voice. She'd had 2 interviews that week, both ending with the same polite rejection email within hours. "We've decided to go with a candidate who better fits our current needs." The phrase had started to haunt her dreams. Maya sat down beside her on their second-hand couch, the springs creaking under the weight. "Em, I need to talk to you about something." The tone made Emma's stomach clench. She knew what was coming before Maya even opened her mouth. "My cousin Jennifer is moving back to the city next month. She needs a place to stay, and—" Maya trailed off, her hands twisting in her lap. "And she can actually pay rent," Emma finished, the words tasting bitter. "It's not that I want you to leave. You know I don't. But I can't keep covering everything, and Jennifer has a steady income from her nursing job. I'm barely keeping my head above water as it is." Emma nodded, understanding flooding through her along with a fresh wave of panic. Maya had been more than generous, covering Emma's share of rent for the past 2 months while she searched for work. But everyone had their limits, and Maya had reached hers. "How long do I have?" Emma asked. 2 weeks. "I'm sorry, Em. I really am. 2 weeks. 14 days to find a job and a place to live, or she'd be moving back to her childhood bedroom in her parents' house 3 states away." The thought made her chest tighten. Going home would feel like admitting defeat, like confirming every doubt her father had ever voiced about her impractical choice to pursue education instead of something stable like business or engineering. That night, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through increasingly desperate options. She could ask her parents for money, but that would mean enduring her father's lectures about fiscal responsibility and poor life choices. She could try to find a roommate situation with strangers, but most people wanted first month's rent plus security deposit up front, money she didn't have. The next morning, Maya had already left for work when Emma woke up. A note on the kitchen counter apologized again and promised they'd find a solution. But Emma knew there was no we in this problem. This was hers to solve alone. She made coffee with the last of their grounds and sat down at her laptop with renewed determination. If the regular job sites weren't working, maybe she needed to think outside the box. She started browsing classified ads, gig economy apps, anything that might provide immediate income. That's when she saw it. Immediate opening. Live-in nanny for 7-year-old girl. Excellent compensation package. Private quarters. Full benefits. Must be available to start immediately. Serious inquiries only. Background check required. Emma's finger hovered over the link. She'd never considered being a nanny, had no experience beyond babysitting her neighbor's kids in high school. But the ad mentioned live-in arrangements, which would solve her housing crisis, and excellent compensation sounded promising. The contact information led to an employment agency called Elite Domestic Services. Their website looked professional, with testimonials from both employers and employees praising their thorough vetting process and quality placements. Emma spent an hour reading through their requirements and expectations before finally calling. Elite Domestic Services, this is Patricia speaking. Hi, I'm calling about the nanny position that was posted online. Yes, the Blackwell position. Are you available to come in today for a preliminary interview? Emma glanced at the clock. It was barely 9 in the morning. Today, Mr. Blackwell is quite particular about timing. His current nanny gave notice yesterday, and he needs someone to start as soon as possible. Can you be here by 11? Emma's mind raced. She had nothing to lose at this point. Yes, I can be there. Patricia gave her an address in the upscale part of downtown, in a building Emma had only ever walked past while window shopping. She spent the next hour and a half getting ready, choosing her most professional outfit, a navy blazer and pencil skirt that Maya had helped her pick out for interviews. The Elite Domestic Services office occupied the entire 15th floor of a gleaming high-rise. The waiting area looked more like a luxury hotel lobby than an employment agency, with plush seating and fresh flowers on every surface. Emma felt underdressed despite her careful preparation. Patricia turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who could probably size up a person's entire life story in 30 seconds. She looked Emma up and down with the efficiency of someone who'd been placing domestic staff for decades. Education degree, no formal nanny experience, recently unemployed, Patricia said, reading from Emma's hastily submitted resume. Why should I recommend you for this particular position? Emma took a breath, deciding honesty was her best strategy. Because I need this job more than anyone else you'll interview today, and that means I'll work harder than anyone else to make sure I succeed. I may not have formal nanny experience, but I understand children. I chose education because I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. This might not be a classroom, but it's still a chance to do that. Patricia's expression didn't change, but she made a note on Emma's file. The Blackwell family requires complete discretion. Mr. Blackwell values his privacy extremely highly, and any breach of confidentiality would result in immediate termination and potential legal action. Are you comfortable with those terms? Yes. The position requires living on the property Monday through Friday, with weekends off unless specifically requested otherwise. The child, Sophia, is 7 years old and has some behavioral challenges stemming from the loss of her mother 2 years ago. Are you prepared to handle a child who may be grieving and acting out? Emma felt something twist in her chest. A motherless 7-year-old who was acting out made perfect sense. Yes, I think I can handle that. Mr. Blackwell travels frequently for business and expects the nanny to manage Sophia's complete care during his absences. This includes coordinating with her private tutors, managing her schedule, and handling any emergencies that arise. The level of responsibility is significant. I understand. Patricia studied her for a long moment. I'm going to be frank with you, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Blackwell is a demanding employer. He's had 4 nannies in the past 2 years. Some left because they couldn't handle Sophia's needs. Others left because they couldn't handle him. What do you mean? Alexander Blackwell is brilliant, wealthy, and completely focused on his business empire. He has little patience for inefficiency or emotional complications. Several nannies have found his management style challenging. Emma thought about her dwindling bank account and Maya's cousin needing her room. I can handle challenging. Patricia smiled for the first time since Emma had walked in. I think you might be able to. I'm going to send your information to Mr. Blackwell's assistant. If he's interested, you'll be contacted for an interview at his home. Fair warning, he typically makes hiring decisions very quickly. Emma left the agency feeling cautiously hopeful for the first time in months. She spent the rest of the day researching everything she could find about Alexander Blackwell online. The results were extensive, but impersonal. Blackwell Industries was a multinational corporation dealing in everything from real estate development to technology investments. Alexander Blackwell had inherited the company from his father at 28 and had tripled its value in the 8 years since. He was featured regularly in business magazines as one of the country's most successful young executives. The personal information was much more limited. His wife, Caroline, had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, leaving behind their daughter Sophia. Since then, Alexander had become even more reclusive, rarely appearing at social events and giving few interviews. The photos Emma found showed a man in his mid-30s with dark hair and sharp features. Even in posed corporate shots, there was something cold about his eyes, as if he was looking through the camera rather than at it. He looked like someone who had never heard the word no in a context that mattered. Emma's phone rang at 8 that evening while she was eating a dinner of ramen noodles and wondering if she'd ever hear back from Elite Domestic Services. Ms. Walsh, this is Margaret, Mr. Blackwell's assistant. He'd like to interview you tomorrow morning at 10. I'll text you the address. The address turned out to be in Windermere Hills, an exclusive gated community about 20 minutes outside the city center. Emma had to take 2 buses and walk a mile from the nearest stop, arriving 15 minutes early and slightly out of breath. The Blackwell estate was everything she'd expected and more. The house sat on at least 5 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, with a circular driveway leading to a front entrance that looked like something from a magazine. Emma counted at least 20 windows across the front facade alone. She rang the doorbell at exactly 10 o'clock, her resume and references clutched in a folder that was slightly damp from her sweaty palms. The woman who answered the door was in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Her clothes were simple but expensive-looking, and she carried herself with the authority of someone who ran a household with military precision. Ms. Walsh, I'm Mrs. Chun, the house manager. Mr. Blackwell is waiting for you in his study. Emma followed Mrs. Chun through a foyer with ceilings that had to be at least 15 feet high, past a formal dining room that could seat 20 people, and down a hallway lined with what looked like original oil paintings. Everything was pristine and elegant, but there was something sterile about it too. It felt more like a museum than a home. Mrs. Chin stopped in front of a heavy wooden door and knocked once before opening it. Mr. Blackwell, Ms. Walsh is here. Send her in. The voice was deep and crisp, with the kind of authority that came from being obeyed without question. Emma stepped into the study and immediately felt smaller. Alexander Blackwell stood behind a massive mahogany desk, and he was imposing in person in a way the photos hadn't captured. Tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit despite being in his own home at 10 in the morning. His dark hair was slightly longer than business formal, and his eyes were an unexpected shade of green that seemed to take in everything without revealing anything in return. He didn't offer to shake hands or invite her to sit. Instead, he studied her with the same intensity she'd imagined he brought to evaluating potential business acquisitions. Patricia says you have no formal nanny experience, he said without preamble. That's correct, but she also says you need this job desperately enough to work harder than other candidates. His tone was neutral, giving no indication whether he saw desperation as an asset or a liability. Emma decided to own it. Yes, I do need this job. But that doesn't make me less qualified. It makes me more motivated. Something shifted almost imperceptibly in his expression. Tell me why you chose education as your field. Because I believe children deserve adults who see their potential instead of their problems. I wanted to be the teacher who made a difference, who helped kids believe in themselves. And yet you're here interviewing to be a nanny instead of teaching. The words stung because they were true. Sometimes life doesn't work out the way you plan. That doesn't mean you give up on what matters to you. Alexander leaned back slightly, still watching her. Sophia is not an easy child, Ms. Walsh. She's angry about losing her mother, angry at me for working so much, angry at the world in general. She's made 3 nannies quit in tears and caused the 4th to request a transfer to what she called a more manageable household. She's 7 years old and her mother died. Of course she's angry. Can you handle angry? Emma thought about her own anger at the job market, at her circumstances, at feeling like a failure despite doing everything she was supposed to do. Yes, I can handle angry. He was quiet for a long moment, those green eyes never leaving her face. The position pays $80,000 a year, plus room and board, health insurance, and 2 weeks paid vacation. You'll have your own suite in the east wing of the house, complete privacy when you're off duty. In exchange, I expect complete professionalism and absolute discretion about anything you see or hear in this house. Sophia comes first, always, but I also expect you to anticipate problems before they become crises. $80,000 a year. Emma's last teaching job offer had been for $32,000. She tried not to let her shock show on her face. I understand. I travel frequently for business, sometimes for weeks at a time. During those periods, you would be Sophia's primary caregiver, working with Mrs. Chun to manage the household. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Yes. Alexander walked around the desk to a window overlooking the backyard. Emma could see an elaborate playground set and what looked like a small horse stable in the distance. There's one more thing you should know. Sophia has decided she doesn't want another nanny. She's declared war on the concept, and she's quite creative in her opposition strategies. What kind of strategies? The last nanny found her bedroom filled with every piece of outdoor furniture from the patio. The one before that discovered that Sophia had somehow managed to reprogram all the digital clocks in the house to different time zones, causing her to miss an important appointment. Sophia is highly intelligent and extremely determined when she sets her mind to something. Despite everything, Emma found herself smiling. She sounds like she knows her own mind. Alexander turned back to her, and, for just a moment, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. That's one way to put it. Most people find her exhausting. Most people probably don't understand that she's testing them to see if they'll stick around. The words came out before Emma could stop them, and she immediately wondered if she'd overstepped. But Alexander didn't look annoyed. If anything, he looked intrigued. Is that your professional opinion, Ms. Walsh? It's my human opinion. She's lost one of the most important people in her life, and now she has a revolving door of caregivers. Of course she's going to test new people. She's trying to figure out if you're worth caring about, or if she should protect herself by pushing you away first. Alexander was quiet for so long that Emma started to worry she'd completely blown the interview. Finally, he spoke. When can you start? The question caught her off guard. You're offering me the job? I'm offering you a trial period. 2 weeks to see how you and Sophia get along. If it works out, we'll discuss a permanent arrangement. If it doesn't, you'll receive 2 weeks severance pay. Are you interested? Emma thought about Maya's cousin, about her empty bank account, about the humiliation of moving back home. But, more than that, she thought about a 7-year-old girl who had lost her mother and was angry at the world. Yes, I'm very interested. Excellent. Mrs. Chun will show you to your quarters and introduce you to Sophia. I'll be in meetings for the rest of the day, but we'll speak this evening about Sophia's routine and expectations. He was already turning back to his desk, clearly considering the interview over. Emma realized she was being dismissed, but she had one more question. Mr. Blackwell, what happened to the 4th nanny? You said one quit for a more manageable household. Alexander paused, his hand on a stack of papers. She lasted 3 days. Sophia convinced her that the house was haunted and that Caroline's ghost was unhappy about having a new woman in the house. The nanny packed her bags in the middle of the night and left a note saying she didn't believe in disrupting the spiritual balance of grieving families. Was the house actually haunted? Alexander looked at her with something that might have been approval. No, Ms. Walsh. The house is not haunted. Sophia is just very good at reading people and knowing exactly which buttons to push. As Emma followed Mrs. Chun out of the study and up the grand staircase to what would be her new home, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something far more complicated than a simple nanny job. The house was beautiful but cold, and Alexander Blackwell was clearly a man who kept the world at arm's length. Emma's suite in the East Wing was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Maya. A sitting area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the garden, connecting to a bedroom that could have comfortably fit her old bed 3 times over. The bathroom was something from a luxury hotel, complete with a soaking tub and separate glass shower. Mrs. Chin stood in the doorway, watching Emma take it all in with obvious amazement. Your meals can be served here or in the main dining room, whatever you prefer. The kitchen is always available if you'd like to prepare your own food. Mr. Blackwell typically eats breakfast at 7 and dinner at 8 when he's home. This is incredible, Emma said, running her hand along the marble countertop of the small kitchenette. I feel like I should be paying to stay here. Mrs. Chun smiled, the first warm expression Emma had seen from anyone in the house. Mr. Blackwell believes that comfortable staff provide better care. Shall we go meet Miss Sophia now? They walked down a hallway lined with family portraits that Emma tried not to stare at too obviously. She caught glimpses of Alexander at various ages, formal family photos, and several pictures of a beautiful blonde woman who must have been Caroline. In the family photos, Alexander looked softer somehow, his arm around his wife, both of them smiling at a toddler with dark curls who had clearly inherited her father's eyes. Mrs. Chin stopped at a door painted soft lavender and knocked gently. Miss Sophia, I'd like you to meet Emma. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Go away, came a voice from inside the room. I told Daddy I don't want another nanny. Emma looked at Mrs. Chun, who shrugged apologetically. She's been like this since yesterday, when Mr. Blackwell told her about the interview. Sophia? Emma called out. I'm not technically your nanny yet. Mr. Blackwell said we're going to try things out for 2 weeks and see how we get along. So really, I'm more like a house guest who happens to know a lot about kids. Silence from the other side of the door. I brought my Nintendo Switch, Emma continued, pulling the gaming console out of her bag. I was hoping to find someone to play Mario Kart with, but if you're not interested. The door opened so quickly Emma almost jumped. Sophia Blackwell was small for 7, with long dark hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed that morning and her father's striking green eyes. She was wearing a pink tulle skirt over jeans and a t-shirt with a glittery unicorn on it. The combination was so uniquely childlike that Emma felt her heart squeeze. You have a Switch? Sophia asked, eyeing the console suspiciously. Brand new. My friend Maya gave it to me as a going-away present. Want to see? Sophia stepped back, allowing Emma into her room. The space was a 7-year-old's dream, a 4-poster bed with flowing curtains, a reading nook filled with books, and an art station with every supply imaginable. But Emma noticed that most of the toys and books looked barely used, as if Sophia had lost interest in playing. I suppose we could play one game, Sophia said with the tone of someone doing Emma a tremendous favor. They settled on the floor near the window, and Emma began setting up the gaming system on Sophia's television. As they played, Emma let Sophia win the first few races while observing the little girl's reactions. Sophia was clearly intelligent. She picked up the controls quickly and developed strategies faster than most kids her age would. You're letting me win, Sophia announced after the 4th race. Emma paused the game and looked at her. What makes you think that? Because you're an adult, and adults always let kids win things. They think it makes us feel better, but it actually makes us feel stupid. You're right. I was letting you win. Want me to play for real now? Sophia nodded seriously, and Emma proceeded to lose the next 3 races legitimately. Sophia was genuinely good at the game. Where did you learn to play like that? Emma asked. Daddy bought it for me after Mommy died. He said it might help me feel better. He doesn't know how to play, so I just practiced by myself. The casual way Sophia mentioned her mother's death hit Emma like a punch to the stomach. This little girl had been dealing with grief largely alone, with a father who meant well but didn't know how to connect with her. Do you miss playing games with other people? Sophia shrugged, but Emma caught the loneliness in her eyes. The nannies never wanted to play for real. They just wanted to make me happy, so I wouldn't be trouble. Well, I'm not trying to make you happy, Emma said. I'm trying to have fun. There's a difference. They played for another hour, with Emma winning some races and Sophia winning others. Gradually, Sophia began to relax, laughing when she performed particularly impressive maneuvers and groaning dramatically when she crashed. Emma, Sophia said as they were putting the gaming system away. Why do you really want to work here? The question was so direct and mature that Emma found herself answering honestly. Because I need a job and a place to live. And because your dad told me you've been giving nannies a hard time. And I like challenges. You do? I do. Want to know a secret? I used to be the kid who gave teachers a hard time. I was really good at making adults uncomfortable when I didn't want them around. Sophia studied her with new interest. What did you do? Oh, I had a whole arsenal. I once convinced a substitute teacher that our regular teacher had trained us to bark like dogs instead of raising our hands to answer questions. The poor woman spent an entire day listening to a classroom full of fourth graders barking at her. Sophia giggled despite herself. That's not very nice. No, it wasn't. I was angry about some things happening at home, and I took it out on people who were just trying to do their jobs. Kind of like someone else I know. Sophia's expression grew guarded again. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. But here's the thing. I'm not going anywhere just because you make things difficult. I've had worse jobs than taking care of one 7-year-old, no matter how creative she gets. Like what? I once spent a summer working at a petting zoo where the goats had learned to open the gate latches. I spent 8 hours a day chasing escaped goats around a parking lot, while families complained that their children couldn't pet the animals. That sounds terrible. It was. But I needed the money, so I figured out how to goat-proof the latches and made the best of it. The point is, I don't give up easy. Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information. The last nanny cried when I told her about Mommy's ghost. Did you actually see your mother's ghost? Or did you make that up? I made it up. But I wanted it to be true. I want Mommy to come back, even if she's a ghost. Emma felt her chest tighten at the raw pain in Sophia's voice. I bet you do. Losing someone you love is the hardest thing in the world. Did someone you love die? Emma thought about her grandmother, who had passed away the year before. My grandmother died last year. She was my favorite person in the whole world. And sometimes I still pick up the phone to call her before I remember she's not there anymore. Does it stop hurting? The hurt changes. It never goes away completely, but it stops feeling like it's going to swallow you whole. And you start remembering the happy things about them more than the sad things about losing them. Sophia nodded solemnly. Daddy doesn't talk about Mommy anymore. I think he wants to forget her. I don't think he wants to forget her. I think it hurts him too much to talk about her, so he's trying to protect himself. Sometimes adults aren't very good at dealing with sad feelings. Are you good at dealing with sad feelings? Emma considered the question seriously. I'm learning. It takes practice. Mrs. Chin appeared in the doorway with a light knock. Miss Sophia, your tutor will be here in an hour. Would you like lunch before your lesson? Can Emma eat with me? Of course. They ate lunch in Sophia's room, gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches, and tomato soup that tasted nothing like the canned version Emma was used to. Sophia chattered about her tutor, Ms. Rodriguez, who came 3 days a week to work on math and reading. I'm supposed to go to regular school next year, Sophia said. But Daddy thinks I'm not ready to be around other kids yet. What do you think? I think other kids wouldn't understand about Mommy being dead. They'd probably ask lots of questions or feel sorry for me. And I don't want that. That's pretty smart thinking. You get to decide when you're ready for things like that. After lunch, Emma retreated to her room to unpack while Sophia worked with her tutor. She'd brought 2 suitcases and a backpack, which seemed pathetic in the context of her enormous closet. As she hung up her few professional outfits, she wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Mrs. Chin knocked on her door around 4 o'clock. Mr. Blackwell would like to speak with you in his study when you're available. Emma found Alexander behind his desk again, this time in shirt sleeves with his tie loosened. He looked like he'd been working for hours, with papers scattered across the desktop and multiple computer monitors displaying what looked like financial charts. How did your first day with Sophia go? He asked without looking up from his work. She's remarkable. Intelligent, funny, creative. She's also deeply sad and angry, which makes perfect sense given what she's been through. Alexander's hands stilled on his keyboard. The anger has been challenging. She's testing boundaries to see if I'll stick around when things get difficult. It's actually a healthy response to loss and change. The previous nannies didn't see it as healthy. The previous nannies probably took it personally. Children don't act out because they dislike you specifically. They act out because they're dealing with feelings they don't have words for. Alexander finally looked at her, those green eyes searching her face. You sound like you speak from experience. I was a difficult child after my parents divorced. I gave everyone around me a hard time because I was scared and angry and didn't know how to express that appropriately. What changed? Emma thought back to Mrs. Patterson, her 5th-grade teacher who had refused to give up on her despite her best efforts to be impossible. Someone finally saw past the behavior to what was causing it. Someone cared enough to stick around and figure out what I actually needed. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Sophia's routine is fairly simple. She has tutoring Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons. Piano lessons on Tuesday and Thursday. She's supposed to practice piano for 30 minutes each day, though she's been resistant lately. Bedtime is 8:30, though she'll try to negotiate for later. What about weekends? I try to spend time with her when I'm home, though I often have work commitments. She has a standing appointment with Dr. Martinez, her therapist, on Saturday mornings. How is the therapy going? Alexander's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Dr. Martinez seems to think Sophia needs more emotional support at home. She feels that Sophia is struggling with feelings of abandonment. The way he said it suggested this was a sensitive topic. Emma chose her words carefully. That makes sense. Losing her mother was a huge abandonment, even though it wasn't intentional. Children often worry that other important people might leave too. I'm not going anywhere. I know that. And you know that. But Sophia's 7. Her understanding of the world is still developing. Add trauma to that. And it's natural for her to have fears about losing the people she loves. Alexander rubbed his temples, suddenly, looking exhausted. I don't know how to. I'm not good at the emotional aspects of parenting. Caroline handled all of that. What were you good at? Practical things. Making sure she was safe, that she had everything she needed materially. Teaching her to ride her bike, helping with puzzles, reading bedtime stories. Those are emotional things too, Emma said softly. They just might not feel emotional to you because they came naturally. Sophia knows you love her, Mr. Blackwell. She's just scared that love isn't enough to keep you here. Why would she think that? Emma hesitated, knowing she was about to venture into potentially uncomfortable territory. Because you work a lot. Because you travel frequently. Because when you're here, you're often distracted by business. I'm not criticizing you, she added quickly. I understand that you have responsibilities, and that work might be how you cope with your own grief. But, from Sophia's perspective, it might feel like you're pulling away from her. Alexander stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to Emma. The silence stretched so long she began to wonder if she should leave. Caroline used to say that I was better with balance sheets than people, he said finally. She was the one who knew how to talk to Sophia about feelings, how to make her feel secure and loved. I provided for them, but she provided for their emotional needs. And now you're trying to do both jobs by yourself. And failing at the more important one. Emma chose her next words carefully. You're not failing. You're learning. There's a difference. And you don't have to do it alone. Alexander turned back to her, something vulnerable flickering across his face before his usual composed mask slid back into place. I should let you settle in. Dinner is at 8 if you'd like to join us, though Sophia usually eats earlier. Actually, she mentioned wanting to show me her art supplies after her piano practice. Would it be all right if we had dinner together in her room? I thought we could work on a project while we eat. That's fine. Mrs. Chun can arrange for your meals to be sent up. As Emma turned to leave, Alexander spoke again. Ms. Walsh, thank you for being honest with me about Sophia's needs. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. What's the point in that? You hired me to help Sophia, not to make you feel comfortable. Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his features. Indeed. Emma spent the evening in Sophia's room, working on an elaborate art project that involved glitter, construction paper, and what seemed like every marker in existence. Sophia had decided they should make a welcome poster for Emma's room, complete with drawings of all of Sophia's favorite things. This is a unicorn, Sophia explained, carefully coloring in a rainbow mane. And this is my daddy's car. And this is Buttercup. Who's Buttercup? My horse. Well, she's not really mine, but Daddy lets me ride her when I want to. She lives in the stable behind the house. You have your own horse. Daddy bought her after Mommy died. He said I needed something to take care of that would take care of me too. Do you know how to ride? I've been on a horse exactly once, at a summer camp when I was 12. I fell off. Sophia giggled. I could teach you. I'm really good at riding. I'd like that. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the television playing softly in the background. Emma found herself relaxing for the first time in months. There was something soothing about the simple task of creating art with a child, something that felt more normal than anything else in this palatial house. Emma, Sophia said as they were cleaning up, Are you going to try to make Daddy happy? The question caught Emma off guard. What do you mean? The other nannies always try to make Daddy smile and laugh. They wanted him to like them. But he never did. I'm not here to make your father happy, Sophia. I'm here to take care of you. Your dad's happiness is his responsibility. Sophia considered this seriously. Good. Because I think he forgot how to be happy when Mommy died. And it's not fair to make people pretend to be something they're not. The insight from a 7-year-old was so astute that Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. You're absolutely right about that. As Emma tucked Sophia into bed that night, the little girl grabbed her hand. Emma, will you still be here tomorrow? I'll be here. What about next week? I'll be here next week too. What about when I'm mean to you? Because I probably will be. I get angry sometimes, and I can't help it. Emma sat down on the edge of the bed, struck by Sophia's self-awareness. When you're mean to me, I'll still be here. When you're angry, I'll still be here. When you're sad or scared or having a bad day, I'll still be here. The only way I'm leaving is if you and your dad decide you don't want me here anymore. Sophia studied her face in the lamplight, searching for any sign of dishonesty. Promise. Promise. 3 weeks into her employment, Emma was beginning to understand the rhythm of the Blackwell household. Alexander left for work before 7 each morning, usually returning around 8 in the evening when he was in town. He traveled at least twice a month for business, sometimes for several days at a time. Mrs. Chun managed the household with military precision, and the small staff of cleaning and maintenance workers moved through the house like shadows, present but unobtrusive. Sophia had tested Emma's commitment in creative ways during those first weeks. She'd hidden Emma's car keys in the freezer, convinced the piano teacher that Emma had canceled lessons, and once barricaded herself in the library claiming she was conducting important research that couldn't be interrupted. Each incident had been handled with patience and consequences that Emma explained clearly beforehand. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday morning when Sophia woke up with what was clearly more than just a case of the grumps. She refused to get dressed, threw her breakfast across the room, and announced that she hated everyone and everything in the world. I don't want to do stupid piano lessons, she declared, crossing her arms defiantly. Piano is dumb, and Miss Peterson smells like old flowers, and I'm not going. Emma looked at the 7-year-old, taking in the dark circles under her eyes, and the way her small hands were clenched into fists. This wasn't ordinary defiance. This was pain looking for an outlet. Okay, Emma said simply. Sophia blinked, clearly having expected an argument. Okay, what? Okay, no piano lessons today. I'll call Ms. Peterson and tell her you're not feeling well. But Daddy says I have to practice every day. Your dad wants you to learn piano because he thinks you'll enjoy it. But if you're having a terrible day, forcing you to sit through a lesson isn't going to help anyone. Sophia studied Emma suspiciously. You're not going to make me? Nope. But we do need to figure out what's really bothering you, because throwing food and yelling isn't going to fix whatever's wrong. Nothing's wrong, Sophia said, but her voice cracked on the words. Emma sat down on the floor next to Sophia's chair, putting them at the same eye level. Want to know what I think? I think something reminded you of your mom today, and it hurt more than usual, and you don't know what to do with that feeling. Sophia's bottom lip trembled. Yesterday was Tuesday. What's special about Tuesday? Mommy always took me for ice cream on Tuesday afternoons. She said Tuesdays were boring, so we had to make them special. Tears started falling down Sophia's cheeks. I forgot about it for a while, but then I woke up this morning and remembered, and now I'm sad and angry, and I miss her so much. Emma felt her own throat tighten. Oh, sweetheart, missing your mom isn't something you need to get over or fix. It's something you carry with you because you loved her so much. But it hurts. I know it does. Love doesn't stop when someone dies, so the missing doesn't stop either. Sophia climbed down from her chair and into Emma's lap, something she'd never done before. Emma held her while she cried, feeling the little girl's body shake with the force of her grief. What if I forget her? Sophia whispered against Emma's shoulder. You won't forget her. Want to know why I'm sure about that? Sophia nodded, not lifting her head. Because she's part of you. She's in the way you scrunch your nose when you're thinking hard, and the way you hum while you're coloring, and the way you take care of your stuffed animals. She's in your kindness and your creativity, and your determination to do things your own way. You're carrying the best parts of her with you every day. They sat together for a long time, Sophia crying and Emma holding her. Finally, Sophia pulled back and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Do you think we could go get ice cream today? For Mommy. I think that sounds like a perfect way to honor her memory. They spent the afternoon at a small ice cream shop in town, where Sophia told Emma stories about her mother. How Caroline used to let her put sprinkles on everything, even vanilla ice cream. How she would make up silly songs while they walked. How she always let Sophia choose the flavor first. Daddy doesn't talk about Mommy anymore, Sophia said, carefully eating around the chocolate chips in her cookie dough scoop. I think it makes him too sad. Daddies aren't always good at sharing sad feelings, Emma said. But that doesn't mean he doesn't miss her too. I know he misses her. Sometimes I hear him talking to her picture in his room when he thinks I'm asleep. Emma's chest tightened at the image of Alexander grieving alone in his bedroom. Your dad loves your mom very much. He probably talks to her picture because it makes him feel closer to her. Do you think she can hear him? I think love is stronger than we understand, and that the people who love us are never really gone. Whether she can hear him or not, I think she knows how much both of you miss her. That evening, Sophia asked if she could tell her father about their ice cream trip. Emma was in the kitchen when she heard voices from the living room. Sophia's animated chatter about their afternoon, and Alexander's deeper voice asking questions about the flavors they'd tried, and whether the shop had been busy. When Emma walked past the living room on her way upstairs, she saw them sitting together on the couch, Sophia curled up against her father's side while he read to her. It was the first time Emma had seen Alexander look truly relaxed since she'd started working there. Later that night, Alexander knocked on Emma's door. She opened it to find him standing in the hallway, still in his work clothes but with his tie gone and his sleeves rolled up. I wanted to thank you for today, he said. Sophia told me about the ice cream and about why she was upset this morning. She needed to talk about her mom. I think she's been holding in a lot of feelings about that. I should have realized. Tuesdays were always their special day together. He ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated with himself. I've been so focused on keeping her routine stable that I didn't think about how certain days might be difficult for her. You can't anticipate every trigger. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. She said you told her it's okay to miss Caroline, that missing someone means you love them. It's true. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Alexander was quiet for a moment, staring down the hallway towards Sophia's room. Caroline always said that feelings weren't problems to be solved, but experiences to be honored. I never understood what she meant until you had to figure out how to help Sophia navigate grief. Until I had to figure out how to navigate it myself, he corrected quietly. Emma saw something vulnerable in his expression, a crack in the composed facade he usually maintained. Grief is hard for everyone, but I think it might be especially difficult for people who are used to being able to fix things. You can't fix missing someone you love. No, you can't. He was quiet again, then looked directly at her. Sophia seems more settled since you arrived. Whatever you're doing, it's working. I'm just trying to be consistent and honest with her. Children need to know they can trust the adults in their lives to stick around, even when things get difficult. Is that your professional opinion or your personal experience again? Emma smiled. Both. I had adults in my life who gave up on me when I was difficult, and I had adults who didn't. The ones who stayed made all the difference. I don't want to be the kind of parent who gives up when things get hard, Alexander said. But I don't always know how to. I'm better with practical support than emotional support. Can I ask you something? Of course. When was the last time you took a full day off from work to spend with Sophia? Alexander looked uncomfortable. I work from home most weekends. That's not the same thing. When was the last time you did something fun together, just the two of you, with no work distractions? He was quiet for so long Emma thought he wasn't going to answer. I don't remember, he finally admitted. What did you and Caroline and Sophia used to do together for fun? We'd go hiking sometimes. Sophia loved the trails near the lake. Caroline would pack elaborate picnics, and we'd spend the whole day outdoors. Sophia was fascinated by everything: birds, insects, wildflowers. She'd collect rocks and leaves to bring home. When did you stop doing that? After Caroline died. It felt too. He trailed off, but Emma understood. Too painful because she wasn't there. Everything reminded me of her. Every tradition, every routine, every place we'd been together. I thought it would be easier to start fresh, to create new routines that didn't have her memory attached. But Sophia loved those traditions too. And those memories are part of her connection to her mother. Alexander leaned against the doorframe, suddenly, looking exhausted. I've made a lot of mistakes, haven't I? You've been surviving. There's a difference. But maybe it's time to start living again, for both of you. I don't know how to do that without her. The raw honesty in his voice made Emma's chest ache. You don't have to know how. You just have to be willing to try. And you don't have to do it alone. Alexander looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Sophia mentioned that you've never been horseback riding properly. Would you be interested in learning? I could teach you this weekend. The offer surprised Emma. You don't have to do that. I know. But I think it might be good for all of us to try something together. Something that's not just about Sophia's care routine. Emma felt something flutter in her chest at the prospect of spending time with Alexander outside of their professional relationship. I'd like that. Though I should warn you, I'm probably terrible at it. Everyone's terrible at first. Sophia was terrified of horses when she was younger, and now she rides like she was born to it. What changed? Caroline convinced her that Buttercup was actually a unicorn in disguise, and that only special people could see her horn. Sophia spent months looking for the horn before she finally admitted she couldn't find it. By then, she was so comfortable with the horse that it didn't matter anymore. It was the first time Emma had heard Alexander talk about Caroline with anything approaching warmth instead of pain. Your wife sounds like she was wonderful. She was. She had a way of making ordinary things feel magical, especially for Sophia. He paused. I haven't been able to do that since she died. I don't know how to create magic. Maybe magic isn't about creating elaborate stories or perfect experiences. Maybe it's just about being fully present for the small moments. Alexander studied her face. You really believe that? I do. Some of my happiest memories are of completely ordinary things. My grandmother teaching me to bake cookies, my dad pushing me on the swings at the park, lazy Saturday mornings reading books with my mom. None of those things were special except for the fact that the people I loved were there, and they were paying attention to me. Sophia mentioned that your grandmother died last year. She did. And I miss her every day. But I wouldn't trade the pain of missing her for not having loved her in the first place. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Caroline used to say something similar. That love was always worth the risk of loss. She was right. I used to believe that. After she died, I thought she was wrong. But watching Sophia with you these past few weeks. He trailed off. What about it? She's opening up again. Taking emotional risks. Trusting someone new. She's braver than I am. Emma felt bold enough to take a step closer. You're here having this conversation with me. That takes courage too. Alexander looked down at her. And, for a moment, Emma was acutely aware of how close they were standing. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. Emma, he said softly, and something in his voice made her heart skip. Yes. But whatever he'd been about to say was interrupted by Sophia's voice calling from her room. Daddy? Emma? I need water. The spell broken, Alexander stepped back. I should go take care of that. Of course. As he walked away, Emma closed her door and leaned against it, her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with their conversation about Sophia. Something was happening between her and Alexander, something that went beyond their professional relationship or their shared concern for his daughter. She thought about the vulnerability in his voice when he talked about not knowing how to create magic for Sophia anymore, about the way he'd looked at her when he'd said her name in the hallway, about how he'd shared memories of Caroline without the usual walls going up around his emotions. Emma had come to the Blackwell house to be Sophia's nanny. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, perfect weather for Emma's first real horseback riding lesson. She'd spent Friday evening with Sophia, who had appointed herself as riding instructor and had very firm opinions about proper stable attire. You can't wear those shoes, Sophia declared, pointing at Emma's sneakers. You need boots with a small heel so your feet don't slip through the stirrups. And you should braid your hair back so it doesn't get in your face. Emma dutifully changed into borrowed boots from Mrs. Chin's collection and let Sophia braid her hair into 2 French braids that made her feel like she was 12 years old again. Perfect, Sophia announced. Now you look like a real rider. Alexander was already at the stable when they arrived, and Emma's breath caught at the sight of him. Gone was the business suit, replaced by worn jeans, riding boots, and a navy sweater that hugged his shoulders in a way that made her mouth go dry. His hair was slightly mussed from the morning breeze, and he looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Good morning," he said, his eyes taking in her braided hair and borrowed boots with what might have been amusement. "Ready for your lesson?" "As ready as someone can be for something they're definitely going to be terrible at." Sophia giggled. "You're not going to be terrible. Daddy's a really good teacher." "Your confidence is inspiring," Emma said, but her voice came out slightly breathless as Alexander moved closer to help adjust her helmet. His fingers brushed against her neck as he secured the strap, and Emma had to focus on breathing normally. This was supposed to be about learning to ride, not about noticing how good Alexander smelled or how his touch sent electricity through her skin. "Buttercup is the gentlest horse we have," Alexander said, leading Emma toward a beautiful chestnut mare. "She's been Sophia's mount since she was 5, and she has infinite patience with beginners." The horse was smaller than Emma had expected, with kind dark eyes and a coat that gleamed in the morning sunlight. Sophia immediately went to the mare's head, stroking her nose and whispering greetings. "The first thing to learn is how to approach a horse," Alexander said, his voice taking on the patient tone of someone who'd taught this lesson before. "Always let them see you coming, move slowly, and speak softly. Horses can sense nervousness, so try to project calm confidence even if you don't feel it." Emma followed his instructions, approaching Buttercup with her hand extended. The horse sniffed her palm curiously, then allowed Emma to stroke her neck. "She likes you," Sophia announced. "She doesn't like everyone. She once bit Ms. Henderson when she tried to pet her." Ms. Henderson approached too quickly and smelled like perfume, Alexander explained. "Horses have sensitive noses." For the next 30 minutes, Alexander walked Emma through the basics of horse care and handling. How to brush the mare's coat, how to clean her hooves, how to check that the saddle and bridle fitted properly. Emma was acutely aware of Alexander's presence beside her, the way he'd place his hand over hers to show her the correct brushing technique, how he'd stand close behind her to guide her movements. "Now for the actual riding," Alexander said finally. "The most important thing to remember is that you're not controlling the horse so much as communicating with her. Horses are prey animals, so they're naturally alert to danger. If you're tense or afraid, they'll sense that and become nervous too." Emma looked at Buttercup's back, which seemed impossibly high from ground level. "How exactly does one communicate, 'Please don't dump me on the ground,' in horse language?" Alexander laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his entire face. "Confidence in your seat, gentle pressure with your legs, and trust that she wants to take care of you as much as you want to stay on her." Mounting the horse proved to be its own adventure. Even with Alexander holding the stirrup steady and Sophia offering encouragement, Emma felt clumsy and off balance as she swung her leg over the saddle. "Straighten your back," Alexander instructed, his hand coming to rest on her lower back to guide her posture. "Good. Now relax your shoulders and lengthen your spine. You want to sit deep in the saddle, not perched on top of it." Emma tried to follow his guidance while also trying not to think about how his touch was sending warmth through her entire body. This was definitely not the time to be distracted by inconvenient attraction to her employer. "How does it feel?" Sophia asked, leading Buttercup around the small paddock while Alexander walked beside Emma's leg, one hand on her knee to steady her. "Terrifying and wonderful at the same time," Emma answered honestly. "I can feel her breathing underneath me. It's like being connected to something much more powerful than myself." "That's exactly right," Alexander said, looking up at her with approval. "Caroline described it the same way when I first taught her to ride." The reference to his wife was casual, without the usual tension that accompanied mentions of Caroline. Emma saw Sophia's face light up at hearing her mother's name spoken naturally. "Mommy was scared of horses at first too?" Sophia asked. "Terrified," Alexander confirmed. She grew up in the city and had never been around large animals. But she was determined to learn because she knew how much riding meant to me. "Tell about when she fell off Thunder," Sophia said, settling onto the fence rail to watch. Alexander's expression softened with memory. "Your mother decided she was ready to try a faster horse after only a few lessons. Thunder was young and spirited, and when a rabbit ran across the trail, he spooked. Caroline went flying into a patch of blackberry bushes. Was she hurt? Emma asked. Just her pride and a few scratches from the thorns. But she climbed right back on, determined to prove the fall hadn't scared her. She rode for another hour with blackberry leaves in her hair, refusing to quit. She was brave, Sophia said proudly. She was stubborn, Alexander corrected with a smile. But, yes, she was brave too. Emma found herself smiling at the story, charmed by this glimpse of Caroline as a real person rather than the perfect wife and mother she'd imagined. Did she ever become a good rider? She became fearless. Within a year, she was taking jumps and riding trails that made me nervous. She said learning to ride taught her that she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. They spent another hour in the paddock, with Emma gradually gaining confidence in the saddle. Alexander proved to be a patient teacher, offering gentle corrections and encouragement without ever making her feel foolish for her beginner's mistakes. I think that's enough for your first real lesson, he said finally. How do you feel? Like I might actually be able to do this with practice, Emma said as he helped her dismount. Her legs felt shaky from the unfamiliar exercise, and she stumbled slightly as her feet hit the ground. Alexander's hands came up to steady her, his fingers closing around her upper arms. For a moment, they stood frozen, Emma's hands braced against his chest, both of them suddenly, very aware of their proximity. Steady, he said softly, his green eyes searching her face. Thank you, Emma managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we go on a trail ride now? Sophia asked, oblivious to the tension between the adults. Emma's ready for the beginner trail, don't you think, Daddy? Alexander stepped back, his hands dropping from Emma's arms. I think Emma has had enough excitement for one day. Actually, Emma said, surprising herself, I'd love to try a short trail ride if you think Buttercup and I are ready for it. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes, approval, maybe, or surprise at her determination. The meadow trail is gentle and scenic. We could do that if you're certain you want to continue. 20 minutes later, they were riding single file along a narrow dirt path that wound through the woods behind the Blackwell property. Sophia led on her own pony, a small gray mare named Moonbeam, while Alexander brought up the rear behind Emma. The trail was peaceful, dappled with sunlight filtering through the canopy of leaves overhead. Emma could hear birds singing and the soft sound of the horses' hooves on the packed earth. For the first time in months, she felt completely present in the moment, not worried about the future or dwelling on past failures. This is beautiful, she called back to Alexander. I had no idea your property extended this far. It's been in my family for 3 generations, he replied. My grandfather built the original house, though my father expanded it significantly when I was young. They emerged from the woods into a meadow filled with wildflowers, and Emma couldn't help but gasp at the view. Rolling hills stretched to the horizon, painted in shades of green and gold in the morning light. This is where Mommy and Daddy got married, Sophia announced, steering her pony toward a large oak tree at the center of the meadow. Right under this tree, Emma looked back at Alexander, who had gone very still in his saddle. This was obviously not part of the planned route. Sophia, he said quietly, perhaps we should head back. But I want to show Emma the tree, Sophia protested. Mommy loved this place. She said it was magic. Emma watched the conflict play out on Alexander's face. He was clearly uncomfortable with being in this place, but he didn't want to deny Sophia the chance to share something that connected her to her mother. We can stay for a few minutes, he said finally. They dismounted under the oak tree, and Sophia immediately began pointing out features of the meadow, where the wedding photographer had stood, where the minister had performed the ceremony, where her grandparents had sat during the reception. Daddy cried when he saw Mommy in her dress, Sophia said matter-of-factly. But they were happy tears. Emma glanced at Alexander, who was staring at the tree trunk as if seeing something she couldn't. His jaw was tight, and she could see the effort it was taking for him to remain composed. It sounds like it was a perfect day, Emma said gently. It was, Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. Caroline chose this spot because she said it felt like the heart of the property. She wanted our marriage to be rooted here, literally and figuratively. Are you sad being here now? Sophia asked, moving to stand beside her father. Alexander looked down at his daughter, and Emma watched him make a visible effort to set aside his own pain for her sake. Sometimes being in places that remind us of happy times makes us sad, because those times are over. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't visit them. Memories need to be honored, even when they hurt. Sophia nodded solemnly. Do you think Mommy knows we're here? I think she knows we remember her, Alexander said. And I think she'd be happy that we're here together. They stayed in the meadow for another 10 minutes, Sophia picking wildflowers while Emma and Alexander sat in the shade of the oak tree. The silence between them was comfortable now, both lost in their own thoughts. Thank you, Alexander said suddenly. For what? For not trying to rush us away from here. For understanding that sometimes we need to sit with difficult feelings instead of avoiding them. Emma looked at him, struck by the vulnerability in his voice. Sophia needs to know that missing her mother is okay. That talking about Caroline doesn't hurt you so much that she has to protect you from her own memories. I have been doing that, haven't I? Making her feel like she can't mention Caroline around me. You've been protecting yourself, which is natural. But Sophia interprets that as her mother being a forbidden topic. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophia chase a butterfly through the wildflowers. After Caroline died, everyone kept telling me I needed to move on for Sophia's sake. Create new traditions, new routines, new memories that weren't connected to the past. I thought that's what healing looked like. What do you think healing looks like now? Integration, learning to carry the love and the loss together instead of trying to choose one over the other. Emma felt something shift between them with those words, a deepening of understanding that went beyond their roles as employer and employee. That's very wise. I learned it from you, Alexander said, meeting her eyes. Watching how you handle Sophia's grief, how you validate her feelings instead of trying to fix them. You've taught us both that it's okay to hurt and heal at the same time. The intensity of his gaze made Emma's pulse quicken. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, awareness, attraction, possibility. I should probably get back, she said, suddenly, feeling overwhelmed by the intimacy of the moment. I promised Mrs. Chun I'd help with menu planning for next week. Alexander nodded, though something that might have been disappointment flickered across his features. Of course. As they rode back to the stable, Emma tried to 2 months into her employment. Emma had settled into a rhythm at the Blackwell house that felt more like home than any place she'd lived since childhood. Sophia had blossomed under consistent care and emotional support, her outbursts becoming less frequent, and her willingness to discuss her mother's death more open. Alexander had gradually begun participating more in his daughter's daily routines, joining them for breakfast when he was in town, and reading bedtime stories without the distracted air he'd carried when Emma first arrived. But the growing tension between Emma and Alexander was becoming harder to ignore. It showed up in small moments. The way their hands would brush when reaching for the same item, the lingering looks across the dinner table, the conversations that seemed to carry deeper meaning than their surface words suggested. Emma caught herself watching for him in the mornings, listening for his voice in the evenings, and looking forward to their brief conversations about Sophia's progress with an intensity that had nothing to do with professional duty. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when Alexander returned from a 3-day business trip to Chicago. Emma was in the kitchen with Mrs. Chun, planning Sophia's birthday party for the following weekend, when they heard the front door open. "Daddy!" Sophia's voice echoed through the house as she ran to greet him. Emma listened to their reunion from the kitchen, smiling at Sophia's excited chatter about everything that had happened while Alexander was away. The little girl had missed him terribly, asking about his return every few hours and making drawings to show him when he got home. "Where's Emma?" she heard Alexander ask. "In the kitchen with Mrs. Chun. She's helping plan my party. We're going to have a princess theme with real horses." Emma's stomach fluttered at the sound of footsteps approaching the kitchen. She tried to process what had happened in the meadow. Alexander had opened up to her in a way he never had before, sharing his grief and his fears about parenting Sophia. And there had been that moment under the tree when the space between them had felt charged with possibility. But Emma reminded herself that Alexander was still grieving his wife, still figuring out how to be a single parent. The last thing Sophia needed was for her nanny to complicate things by developing feelings for her father. No matter how much Emma's heart raced when Alexander looked at her with those green eyes, no matter how right it had felt to sit beside him in the place where he'd married the love of his life, she had to keep her professional boundaries intact. Sophia's well-being had to come first. It was what Emma had been hired to ensure, and it was what she cared about most. Even if it meant ignoring the growing certainty that she was falling in love with Alexander Blackwell. As she got ready for bed, Emma tried to push those thoughts away. Alexander was her employer, and she was his daughter's caregiver. Getting involved romantically would complicate everything, potentially hurting Sophia in the process. But, as she lay in bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Alexander had looked when he'd talked about Caroline's belief that love was worth the risk of loss, or the way her own heart had responded when he'd said her name in that soft, uncertain voice. Maybe some complications were worth the risk. As Emma walked back to her own room that night, she reflected on everything that had happened in just one day. Sophia was indeed challenging, but she was also insightful, creative, and desperately in need of stability. Alexander was harder to read, clearly devoted to his daughter, but struggling with his own grief and the demands of single parenthood. Emma fell asleep in her luxurious new bed thinking about the poster Sophia had made for her room. Among the unicorns and rainbows, the little girl had drawn a stick figure of herself holding hands with a taller stick figure labeled Emma. Under the drawing, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, "My new friend." It was a small thing, but it felt like the first victory in what Emma suspected would be a long campaign to reach both Blackwells. She was already looking forward to the challenge. But somewhere in this mansion was a little girl who needed someone to stay, someone to prove that not everyone would leave when things got difficult. As Emma walked through the halls that would become familiar, she made a silent promise to that unknown child. She was going to stay. No matter what Sophia threw at her, no matter how challenging Alexander proved to be, no matter how out of her depth she felt, she was going to stay and figure out how to reach a grieving little girl. She just had no idea that in the process, she'd end up reaching the grieving man as well.